Salut, you're living in France or you're planning to move to France and you started to get worried about how income tax works in France. Everybody seems to be talking about it. They're talking about how much it might cost, they're talking about percentages or brackets, but nobody actually took the time to explain to you how this is working. Until now. In this video, I'm going to explain to you how income tax works in France. Impôt sur le revenu, we're going to be talking about timescale as to when do you declare, when do you pay. We'll see a few words of vocabulary that you need to know in order to talk to your bank manager or to your accountant. And then I will explain how it works. And I will also share my favorite online tool in order to assess your income tax in France. Now, before we get started, just a few disclaimers. I'm a business advisor, not an accountant, so no need to post comments about how to declare your dividends or rental income from abroad. And the second disclaimer is that you don't want to file your French income tax on your own by second guessing. Please, please, please book an appointment with the tax office or an accountant. And if you need an introduction to an English-speaking accountant, just send me a DM or an email. I'll add my email below. Add a short description as to whether you're employee, self-employed, non-resident, what your issues are, and I will introduce you to an English-speaking accountant. So we're ready to go. Let's get started. The first question to ask ourselves is who should be declaring some income tax in France? So basically it's anyone who's earning an income in France and living in France. If you have a residency card, carte de séjour, business visa, visa privé, famille, it's a clear sign that you should be filing a French income tax form, even if it's at €0, because when you get to renew your visa, you'll have to give one of those lovely attestations fiscales, which basically shows what was your income in France. So if you would be a French resident, if you are an employee, you're self-employed, you retired in France, this would apply to you and you would file your income tax. You will also have to declare your worldwide income, but this would be income earned and taxed abroad. And basically what we have is usually with most countries, there's a double taxation agreement, which means that whatever has been earned and taxed abroad won't be taxed again in France, but they need to know about it in order to know your household income or your global income. This is useful when it comes to actually borrowing money to buy a house or to borrow some money for something else. Now, you might also have to declare if you are a non-resident, because if you own a property in France and you're actually renting it on Airbnb or a similar site, you need to declare this income in France. And most people forget this, but basically rental income from your own property has to be declared in France. And in that case, that also means having your Airbnb or gîte registered fully as a non-professional LMNP, and you can watch my other videos. I'll add a link below. Don't worry if you're only renting your property and you're non-resident in France. All you need to declare is that rental income. You don't need to declare your worldwide income because you're not a French resident. Let's look at the time scale to declare and pay your French income tax. Well, the first thing that you need to know is that French income tax is actually based on a calendar year. So we are going to be declaring what we've earned between the 1st of January and the 31st of December of 1 year. So for instance, here I'm recording this video in March 2024, and we are about to declare soon the income that we earned last year. That's quite strange. But basically, in May each year, we declare on paper or online the income that we earned the previous year. So for instance, in May 2024, I'm going to be declaring the income that I've earned between the 1st of Jan 2023 and the 31st of December 2023. Now, some of you might have been employee or receiving a French pension or be micro-entrepreneurs. You might be thinking, well, I've already paid my income tax at source called impôt libératoire. And it's true that France, a couple of years ago, moved to a system where if you're an employee, you have a French pension, or even if you're a micro-entrepreneur, you have this option to start paying your income tax at source, which means that from your payslip or from your pension or with your social charges for a micro-entrepreneur, you would pay an extra percentage to go towards your income tax. However, you still have to file a yearly income tax declaration, déclaration d'impôt sur le revenu, because you might have other sources of income. For instance, you might have some rental income, you might receive some dividends or another thing. So you have to file this because basically at that time, the tax office is going to look at your what we call the household income, your global income in France, and they're going to tax the total. When you have the income tax at source, impôt libératoire, as an employee, a pensioner, or a micro-entrepreneur, it doesn't take into account those other sources of income, and you need to declare them. So another thing to pay attention to is that when we talk about the 2024 income tax declaration, it's actually income from 2023. So just something to bear in mind whenever we say income tax declaration for 2024, it's the one from last year, basically. When we say income tax declaration 2025, we refer to the income earned in 2024. Now let's look at this chart, just basically shows you the deadlines to complete and return your French income tax declaration varies as to where you are living in France, in which department you're based. So this picture just shows you basically you have until the 23rd of May if you're in department 01 to 19. You have until the 30th of May for 2024 if you're in department 20 to 54, and you have until the 6th of June if you're in department 55 to if you're living in La Réunion. So always refer to the department where you're living in. For instance, I live in La Manche, which is 50. So for La Manche, we have until the 30th of May. Just a note to myself, 30th of May. And also the deadline is different whether you're doing it on paper and whether you're doing it online. Now, first thing for you to remember is when you just moved to France, your first French income tax declaration will have to be done on paper. You can't do it online, even if you went to your tax office to ask for what is called your TIN number, your unique fiscal number. That first declaration has to be done on paper, and then next year, once you will have received your attestation fiscale and you have a reference, you will be able to create your online account. Moving on to the French vocabulary that you need to know in order to understand your French income tax. So we've seen income tax, impôt sur le revenu, impôt sur le revenu. And we've seen income tax declaration, which is called déclaration d'impôt sur le revenu. Déclaration d'impôt sur le revenu is the papers that you have to fill in and return online or by paper. Now we have avis d'imposition. So avis d'imposition is really useful. Is basically once you file your income tax declaration, so we've seen you just have to file that by May. When it's your first ever declaration, you're not going to get the attestation or the avis d'imposition until August, September, when they post to you the avis d'attestation where it says, okay, we filed it, this is your official income, this is how much you own. And it's not a great time scale because usually you come back from holidays and August, bam, you get your bill. So you've assessed more or less how much you owe, but when you come back from holidays or you're still on holidays, you get that bill waiting for you online or on paper. So avis d'imposition is a super important document. You always want to keep a copy. You file it somewhere because whenever you will be asked for it quite often. If you want to borrow some money to buy a house or to have a loan, if you want to apply for the crèche to have your kids looked after, you have to show your income. If you want to apply for allowances for your kids going to uni, all of this, they always ask for avis d'imposition. So you make sure you keep a copy. If you share this with someone, also pay attention to try to hide some of the personal details so it can't be used. It can't be used by somebody else. Two other words that I want you to know, and we're going to be using in a moment, is foyer fiscal. So foyer fiscal is the people who are in your household. So if you're married, it's a married couple. If you have kids, it's your kids. So a household is if you are married or you have a civil union. We talk about foyer fiscal, people living together with or without kids. And then the second word that I want you to learn, and you're pretty advanced when you get to this, your friends will be really impressed, is part fiscal. Now you sound like a pro if you know that. The part fiscal is basically referring to the number of fiscal shares that you have in your household. Right, let me explain this. Basically, part fiscal is one person in the family. So if you're two people, you're married or you have a civil union, there's two fiscal shares, deux part fiscal. And then so if you're living together, but you're not married, you don't have a civil union, it's just you're declaring on your own, you're filing separately, so you have one part fiscal. So if I go back to my couple married or with the civil union, now if they have kids are half a share, so not half a share, sorry. So if I go back to my married couple or my couple in the civil union, it's one share each, and then we're going to add half a share per kid, so half a share for the first two kids, and then from the third child is one full share per child, because France loves children, and that's why you see that France loves children, because when you have many, then it significantly reduces your income tax. But as we do know, when kids go older, it also costs a lot of money, especially if they go to uni. So for instance, let me take an example. If I say I have a couple, they have a civil union and Pax in France. You are Pax and Pax, and they have two kids. So this couple has an official relationship with the civil union, a Pax. So we have two fiscal shares, one for each adult, and they have two kids, so half a share for each. So in total, I have 3 fiscal shares, 3 par fiscal. And I'm going to explain this a bit further when we start doing the calculation. So really, the vocabulary I want you to know for now is impôt sur le revenu, déclaration d'impôt sur le revenu, avis d'imposition, foyer fiscal, part fiscal. And for this, you're ready for any dinner party in France when it gets complicated. So what are the income tax rates in France? Now make sure you watch this video until the end before you start panicking saying, mais non, c'est pas possible because it's too high, how comes we're paying so much? For now, we don't know what the bases are, so the basis for calculation. So just note the rates, and then I'm going to explain which base we use to apply those rates. No need to panic at this time. Ta-da! So here we go. We've got the tables, the brackets that is taxable, la base d'impôt sur le revenu en barème d'impôt sur le revenu. So basically, it refers on the left to the income that is liable to income tax per share. Earlier I talked about part fiscal, and I will explain this in a moment. And on the right, we have the taxation rate. So basically on the left, for a fiscal share, we know that the income below 11,000 euros, there's no taxes. The income between 11,000, I'm just giving rough numbers, but you can read them. 11,000 to 28,000 is 11% of taxation. 28 to 82,000 is 30%. 82 to 177, 41%. And above, it's 45%. Yes, there is a 45% bracket rates in France. So these are the bases. On this picture, you can see that this is the barème for the 2024 income, basically referring to the income earned in 2023. So make sure that if you're watching this video in the future, you check for the latest one for the year you are in. So just type barème impôt revenu, impôt sur le revenu, and you will get the up-to-date version. So let's keep on, and now we're going to move on to looking at how this calculation is done. So we are now in the nitty-gritty about how the French income tax works. So basically, I mentioned two important words. I mentioned part fiscal and foyer fiscal. So foyer fiscal are the people who are living together with a civil union or who are married. And the part fiscal is the exact number of people, how many shares does it give them in terms of income tax. So for instance, if we have this married couple and they have two kids, each adult is 1 share. And the kids are half a share, so in total we have 3 fiscal shares. And the way the French income tax works is that basically we're going to take the household income, so we add the salary, the entrepreneur's income, the French pension, for instance, divided by the number of fiscal shares, and then we submit that to the taxation grid that I just showed earlier. So we just cut the income into brackets, apply the exact percentage to that bracket, and then we time it again by the number of fiscal shares. For instance, in that example, if I had a couple with 2 kids, so I have 3 fiscal shares, I add their income. So for instance, the net salary plus the entrepreneur's income divided by 3, I submit it to the grid, add that number, and then time it by 3 again to get the French income tax form. So I'm going to give you 2 examples from the tax office, and then it's a bit of a pain to do it on your own, so I will show you the tool that I use in order to assess the French income tax. So here we are. I'm going to be taking 2 examples from the tax office so you can see how it works. It's a bit of a French lesson at the same time and a math lesson. So spoiler alert, I'm starting with a single person. Unfortunately, they are the people who tend to be taxed the most. If you have high income, you can't divide it by anything because you're on your own. We talked about fiscal shares. We can't divide it by 1, so it's the same result. So here we have someone, a single person, no kids. This person has a net salary of 32,000 euros. So you can see here that they have the barème fiscal. So basically 32,000 net salary divided by 1 fiscal share, so divided by nothing. And I'm just going to be basically cutting that income between the different brackets to see the taxation level for each. Add it up together, and you can see at the end, so if I cut that 32,000 euros between different brackets, it's 2,886 euros, and then I time it by 1 again, because it's just 1 fiscal share, so this person will pay, out of 32,000 euros of a net salary, this person will pay 2,886 euros. So yes, if that person did pay the income tax at source, hopefully it should be close enough so she might have a little lump sum to pay, but it might have already been paid. If the salary hasn't changed at all, it would be all good. If there were other incomes, there might be an extra little income to pay. Second example, here we're going to be taking a married couple and have 2 kids under 18. So your kids can stay with you. If they're above 18 and they're studying, you can still add them onto your personal income tax form. And if they have a summer job, basically you need to add their net salary as well in your own declaration. So here this is a married couple or a couple with a civil union, paxé, and they have 2 kids, and their total net income is 55,950 euros. So for now, I'm just not explaining gross salary, net salary, entrepreneur's income. I'll have a little explanation in a moment for micro entrepreneurs. So in this case, this married couple, they have 2 kids. So we have 1, 2, 3 fiscal shares. So basically, we're going to take that net income, revenu net, 55,000 divided by 3, and we apply it to that grid, the barème fiscal. We get basically we get 809 euros, and we have to time it again by 3 to get the total French income tax. So the family would pay around 2,400 euros. So as you can see, it's a rough calculation. There might be smaller rules that apply to you, or you might have given money to charity and therefore have a tax credit, or might have somebody doing homeschooling or cleaning, which would entitle you to some deductions. So this one is just a rough calculation in order to see how it works, just so that you can understand the mechanism. Now, little aparté about the micro entrepreneur or the entrepreneur's income. So you can see versus employees. For employees, you could see that I talked about gross salary, net salary. So basically, when we talk about the income here, you have to take your net salary, and I will show you in a moment the simulation tool. Again, take the net salary. When we talk about entrepreneur's income, the entrepreneur's income is going to vary according to the type of business you're going for. So for instance, if you're a micro entrepreneur, your income is not your turnover. It's a percentage of your turnover. And basically, based on your activity, if you're a profession libérale, you're a consultant, coach, etc., the tax office considers that your business income is 66% of your turnover. If you are an artisan or selling commercial services, your income, your business income, is considered as being 50% of your turnover. And if you are a buying to resell e-commerce shop, for micro entrepreneur, your entrepreneur's income is seen as being 29% of your turnover. So basically, when you're going to be doing your own calculation, if you're a micro entrepreneur, to assess how much you would be liable for, you would take 66% of your turnover if you're profession libérale, 50% if you're artisan or selling some commercial services, and you would take 29% if you are actually buying to resell. Now, if you are entreprise individuelle, réel simplifié, if you are an earl or a SARL, basically your income as an entrepreneur is the profit. So that's what you would take as an income, and then it gets more complicated. So basically, macro entrepreneur is a percentage of your income. Sole trader, réel simplifié, early would be your profit. Well, if you are president of a SASU, you're paid a salary. So again, you take your net salary. Now, because I talk about micro entrepreneur, I can see you saying, well, yeah, but Valerie, I'm actually paying my income tax at source. So I'm going to pay again. So don't worry, you're not going to be paying again, but basically, even if you decide to opt for what we call impôt libératoire as a micro entrepreneur, where you are paying your income tax at source at the same time as the social charges, and this is also an option available for people under the EARL. If you opted for this, you're already paying your income tax at source for your micro entrepreneur or your EARL at the same time as the social charges. However, this tool I'm going to show you and this whole process is interesting for you to understand the overall income tax system and how it works, because it's an opportunity for you to say, okay, is it still my advantage to have the impôt libératoire, or would I be better off with that second regime where I'm going to be declaring and paying 1 year later? But whichever option you're going to go for, whenever you have a French income tax, you have to file a paper version or online version once a year, full stop, because this is how we measure the household income in France, which is necessary to prove your income whenever you want to borrow money or for the tax office and so on. So now I'm going to be sharing with you my favorite tool to assess your French income tax and it's actually a tool from Boursorama. Boursorama is an online bank in France. You also have them for Boursorama, and that's one of the online bank I recommend for entrepreneurs. And basically, their online tool is great to quickly assess what your French income tax could be. Again, if your situation is complex, please take the time to go through an accountant, get some advice to help you choose between the different options. This one is just to have a quick simulation to see how much you might pay. And for instance, I use it for my customers to compare whenever I have a micro entrepreneur and they're hesitating between the income tax at source, paying it together with the social charges, or paying 1 year later. I use this to have a quick simulation looking at the household situation to see which one would be best. So for you, you can use this if you want to have a quick review of how much you think you might pay in terms of income tax. So basically, with Boursorama, they have this simulation tool. So I went for the basic one, so the express version. And whenever we're using it, usually we just take the year before because it's easier. Basically, are you married, single, widowed? Have you split up? Do you have a civil union? Do you have a PAX? So PAX is civil union, or you living together with no legal link together. So here I'm going to take the example of a married couple. Now, how many people are in the family? So that's where we come down to the it calculates your part fiscal. So for instance, I'm a married couple, I have 2 kids. It does calculate for me the nombre de parts, part fiscal. That's what I explained to you here. 2 adults and 2 kids is 3 parts. Part fiscal. Let's say I say 3 kids, then it calculates my part fiscal, it says 4. So that's nice already, just to help you calculate what is your part fiscal. And then here you're going to be entering your net income. So, that's not the easiest tool to be using if you don't know what you're referring to. But basically, if you're an employee, we don't talk about your gross salary, we talk about your net salary. When we talked about the entrepreneur earlier, micro entrepreneur, I did mention a percentage of your turnover to take. So that's what we would take. Let's say you have an employee and the gross salary is 45,000 net, and we have a micro entrepreneur as a consultant with 30,000 euros of turnover. As a consultant, we take 66% of that as being your revenu net. So you add all of this together, and then it calculates your taxes. So I'm going to add a random number, let's say 45,000 euros. I just click on calculate. And basically what it does is applies the rules I've explained to you in the previous chapter as to taking your net income, dividing it by the fiscal shares, applying it to the different grid, time it again by your fiscal share, and it basically says, okay, if that married couple with 2 kids has 45,000 euro of net income, the French income tax would be 332 euros. So let's have a quick simulation. I'm getting my calculator out. Always useful, the iPhone. So let's say I have a micro entrepreneur who's earned 30,000 euros, who've cashed in 30,000 euros of turnover last year. 30,000 euros. So basically, I explained if it's a consultant, that is 66% of that. So I said times 66%. So that's 19,800 euros. And then I'm going to add the net salary of the spouse. So let's say that the spouse has a net salary of 35,000 euros. So my net income for this couple is 54,800 euros. I click on calculate, and it tells me basically, okay, the income tax for that family as a whole is 1,898 euros. So you can see that's really interesting. Just bear in mind, don't panic. If you are a micro entrepreneur and you've paid the income tax at source, you're not going to pay again. This one just enables you to assess how much overall you would pay as a family. So if you already paid your income tax as source for your micro entrepreneur income, you're not going to pay on top. But sometimes it's nice to compare. For instance, you on your own, if you're a micro entrepreneur, you might say, okay, what happens if I'm a micro entrepreneur and do I want to pay the income tax at source, or do I want to pay it 1 year later? You could use this to compare. So for instance, if I go back to, say, my micro entrepreneur who was earning 30,000 euros, so that's 19,800 euros of net income for that micro entrepreneur who's invoiced 30,000 euros last year. So for instance, you would say here, that person, if they're on their own, as a micro entrepreneur, for the business income, they would have paid 487 euros. Now, if I take the same simulation, I take the 30,000 euros times the impôt libératoire, the income tax at source, which is 2.2%. If that person had opted for the income tax at source, as a micro entrepreneur, they would have paid 660 euros. While here, going for the second option, they would pay less. So that's why this simulation is good especially for entrepreneurs or micro entrepreneurs. Before you go for your business, do the simulation as to see, taking your own criteria, which one is best. So it helps you decide whether you want to go for the impôt libératoire or the other. Obviously, that's quite a complex topic. I tend to cover this in a one-to-one course. If you want to book a power hour for micro entrepreneurs, I'll add the link below. So that's how the global French income tax is working. You might want to make simulations for you to see how much you might pay this year. When you see that you have high income tax at the end, or you think it's going to be high, maybe it's a clue that you might want to give money to charity, that you want to invest in things that give you tax credits. So again, you get advice from an accountant to see what would be best for your situation. So this is how the French income tax is working. So I know that was a bit of big heavy sessions, but leave me a comment to let me know whether you had an aha moment that I'm right, that's how it's working, d'accord, or whether this is just going way over your head. Let me know what you think. Again, if you want some advice for your personal income tax, what I can recommend is to really go and book an appointment with your tax office. They're actually very helpful, or get the help from an accountant. And if you want an introduction, just send me a DM or an email and I will introduce you to one of the accountants that I work with. Voilà, c'est tout pour aujourd'hui. Salut!